Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
It's Monday, November 18th, 2024. I'm Dr. Omekongo Dibinga, sitting in for Roland tonight. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Tennessee state officials say the state's largest historically Black university is out of money. We'll tell you how much the state had to give the HBCU to keep the institution financially viable. North Carolina State Attorney General is investigating allegations against Saint Augustine's Board of Trustees. We'll talk to an associate professor about the claims and why a judge threw out a lawsuit against the school Board of Trustees. We'll talk to the civil rights attorney who helped secure a multi-million-dollar settlement between Palm Springs, California, and the surviving former residents and descendants of a Black and Latino neighborhood that the city burned to the ground 60 years ago to make way for commercial development. We'll have all these stories and much more. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling.
Tennessee state officials authorized a $43 million infusion into Tennessee State University's operating budget in November to make payroll and prop up the university for the rest of the year. The funds come after the university laid off 114 people and cut expenses to cope with the financial crisis. TSU's new president acknowledged the university was about to go into the red on November 1st, even after it saved $11 million annually by letting go of the 114 staff members in October and saved another $13 million by cutting spending, travel, and purchases. University officials also went to Washington, D.C. and met with Saudi Arabian officials at the consulate to request $7 million owed to TSU. TSU's previous Board of Trustees signed a contract to pay former President Glenda Glover at least $800,000 to serve as an advisor after she resigned on June 30th. TSU's finances have been in trouble for decades. In 2023, a federal report found that TSU had been underfunded by $2.1 billion over 30 years. A previous state study determined the university, one of two land-grant institutions in Tennessee, was shorted by $150 million to $540 million over a century. 2 years ago, lawmakers approved $250 million for improvements to the campus at the governor's request, but those funds cannot be used for housing. TSU is working on a separate dorm project. Remember, Tennessee lawmakers voted to dismantle TSU's Board of Trustees earlier this year. There's a board meeting on Thursday. We'll be following up with this and bring you any updates. But right now, I would like to bring in my panelists to start us off with tonight, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist and author based out of D.C. and former president of Bennett College. So, Dr. Malveaux, I mean, I got questions for days. Just take it from you, from how you're seeing this, because wow, break it down from how you see it. All right. And we're going to still work on Malvo and get her up and running. We're going to take a break and be right back at Roland Martin, live on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free-to-download, free-to-use, next-generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early-stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
My name is Lena Charles, and I'm from Opelousas, Louisiana. Yes, that is Zydeco capital of the world.
My name is Margaret Chappelle. I'm from Dallas, Texas, representing the Urban Trivia Game.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you watch.
Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
All right, and we are back, and we have Dr. Malvo ready to share her thoughts. Dr. Malvo, hope you're doing well.
I am. Good to see you in the host chair.
It's great to be here. So look, I just needed to lean on your expertise. What the hell is going on? Tennessee.
Well, first of all, the college has always been underfunded. The other land-grant university has gotten better funding than TSU has. So that's part of the story, is the persistent underfunding of HBCUs. Number two, it's specious to bring up Dr. Glover's exit package. She deserved it. She worked very hard. She did her very best. She got the university with a higher research status than it had when she came in. And so, to me, talking about how much money she gets or doesn't get is, again, it's hating. She's I think she was there for more than 10 years. She came shortly after I went to Bennett and stayed. She's just left. So an exit package is not unusual, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. She wasn't given a present. She was given an exit package. That happens. Number three, there is an increasing hostility toward HBCUs, an increasing hostility that suggests that we don't deserve to be treated as well as our PWI counterparts. And what that has tended to mean when you have hostile Republican legislatures is that they will come down on these universities and they will deal with them very harshly and inappropriately. So TSU is a great university, has a robust enrollment, has a graduate school, should be lifted up, but instead, because of politics, primarily politics, is being dragged down.
And so when you look at what's happening at TSU, do you look at it as, one, just no respect for HBCUs? Is it about we want this land? Is it a combination of everything? Is this added to the fact of, blame a Black woman for everything? It doesn't seem like there's much conversation about what you're talking about in terms of historic challenges that have been with the government in Tennessee itself. And it seems like people are trying to paint it as we're kind of swooping in to save this university that just doesn't know how to manage itself. Seems like it's a lot bigger than that.
It's much bigger than that. It's BS to say that they didn't know how to manage themselves. They did the best. Glenda Glover did the best that she could with what she had. Again, persistent underfunding has to be something that's addressed. And yeah, there are always haters, and we know that. But also there's the envy of the land that we have and the record that we have. People always want to snatch our stuff. I'm a Congo, you and I have talked offline. I live this in terms of Bennett College. People, we could just have that. We could just have that. I live this. And unfortunately, I'm not as diplomatic as Dr. Glover is. So at a point in time, I was like, if you like it, then you could have taken a ring off it. But she's done a brilliant job, and she didn't create the financial situation. If the college had been properly funded from Front Street, they would not be here. If an audit is ever done to see what has happened, they would see what has happened in Tennessee in terms of TSU. Um, Again, we live now in a cloud of anti-blackness. I dare say that maybe 10 years ago, there might have just been a transfer of funds without any conversation. But now anti-blackness is in the air. All of us live it every day. And in living that, what we're living is attack on Black education. Understand, if you look at Project 2025, they want to get rid of diversity. They want to get rid of the Department of Education. What they don't want is for our young people to understand what our roots are. They don't want us to read Claude McKay. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, haunted and pinned to this inglorious spot. They don't want young people to understand that there's a history of resistance and that HBCUs and Black people, indeed all of us, have been under attack since we got here. And so the TSU story is just a chapter in the story of how predominantly white institutions and white politicians attack Black people.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the students, because that's what I wanted to come to next. Some people like to paint this as an issue of, well, this is at the higher levels, at the university, administrators levels, presidential levels, and the students are just going about their business. But I would assume that students are seeing what's going on. They know what's going on. And in many of our schools where enrollment has been up because people are looking at, our students are looking at these schools as safe spaces, now they get there and they feel like they're being targeted for financial reasons as well. My assumption is that it also adds a certain level of insecurity for the students.
Oh, absolutely. When students see their colleges in trouble, it really raises their concern about what happens to me next year. It's when you have changes in the loan policies. I remember back in 2011 when Arnie Duncan was Secretary of Education, and he changed the Parent Plus loan policy, which made it more difficult for parents to get loans for their students' education. It created a panic among young people because some of them, their parents had said, I'll pay this much if you pay that much. And if they couldn't get Parent Plus loans, it wasn't going to happen. People do not understand the enormous stress that many African American students, especially those enrolled at HBCUs, and white students enrolled at HBCUs as well, feel when they feel like they're not sure that their money is going to come through. And it's palpable. You can feel it in the air. Students wondering, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? And so, you put a group of young people in a state of uncertainty. They're already young. They already have issues around finance. And then you throw something else that's like throwing, a match on a tinder block. I'll never forgive Arnie Duncan for what he did. And they did have to roll some of it back. But basically, it created a climate of instability and fear.
Wow. I want to, I know also with your, economist esteemed background, this one part just really tripped me out. And the part, 2023, when it said that TSU had been underfunded by $2.1 billion over 30 years, but a previous study said that it was only shorted $150 million to $540 million over a century. I mean, the fact that a discrepancy of that large could be just all of a sudden uncovered a year ago, there's something else going on here.
Well, what's going on is that these state funded HBCUs have never treated the HBCUs on the same playing field as they've treated their PWIs. And especially when you look at the land grant colleges, they've never been treated in the same way. And so they have to work harder to make their case for why they should be funded. Their students are never funded at the same level that PWI students are funded. I mean, Ray Charles could see through that. Congo, you know that. Ray Charles could see through that. Or Stevie Wonder. Well, any one of our blind brothers is. What is the problem here? The problem here is Black self-determination. TSU has been a great university, done great work, produced great scholars, but it has been a university that has had to fight for every penny. If you look at the same area, look at Fisk University, which is a private, so they don't have public funding. They have been consistently dissed. Even when they did qualify for state funds, they didn't always get them. You know, lynching culture, don't let me get started today. But lynching culture, you could do whatever you want to do to Black people and basically have no consequences. And so part of that is the underfunding of our schools. The financial crisis is a crisis that was made by white supremacy. It's not a crisis of mismanagement. If you went back through and audited those books, you will not find mismanagement. You will not find profligate spending. What you will find is a very careful stewardship of the few funds that are available there. So I don't know what to say. When I read about this, I was just flabbergasted because Dr. Glover is a friend and a colleague, and I think she's done a brilliant job. But I think when she resigned because she'd had enough of white people and their nonsense. Had enough of a state governing board, which, when it tilted Republican, decided that TSU had assets that they could take. And so when you then turn this college into something that's a financial crisis, well, gee, we have to take it over. And we know about Tennessee. We know about the two young brothers there in the legislature, one of whom I believe is a TSU alum, who have stood up and said, challenging the State Board of Education, which has gone in there with a bunch of falsehoods, to attempt to take over some of those assets. Understand, if they didn't have any assets, or let me get real ghetto, if they had no assets, their would not be up in this. I'm trying to be clean, but there are valuable aspects to that university that some would like to take over. So we thank you, Roland, thank you, Congo, for lifting this up, because we got to fasten our seatbelts. The new president and his people want to eliminate the Department of Education, which is a source of funds for many of our HBCUs. So what are they saying and what are they doing? And this is a problem.
I want to bring in Eljoy Williams, a political strategist and host producer of Sunday Civics out of Brooklyn, New York. I'm such a fan of your work. Great. I'm such a fan of your work, I must say, to start with. And I want to get your take on, when you look at this, some people want to look at this HBCU situation, or this is just a school thing, this is just an education. But with the work that you do on Sunday Civics, is kind of what we've been talking about now. What are your thoughts on the fact when people just say, actually, if you realize this is all political?
Well, everything is political. And as Dr. Malveaux has already mentioned, there are valuable assets that we have to pay attention to, of why are people trying to take control over whether it's university space, whether it's our other institutions in our community, is to ask those questions. What is at stake? What do we lose? And what are people trying to gain for themselves? And so with anything, as you know, as a listener of the show, is getting to the root of what the issue is, who the decision makers are, is really important, and shining a light on these issues, because quite often these happen and we're talking about it after the fact. And so to really shine the light on it now as it is happening, for people to ask the questions and to be engaged and be involved in the process is really important.
And given the work that you do on these campuses and across the country as well, do you feel like there's going to be additional hostility towards what's happening? I mean, we've already looked at what's happening at TSU to be kind of hostile enough, but is it going to be increased given how so many people try to make HBCUs a kind of hub for political activism coming into this election? And now that we have Trump in office and everything that's going on that way, do you feel like the backlash is going to become more intense, the target is going to be more intense towards TSU?
Well, listen, I did a show a couple of weeks ago talking about the intense and political environment on college campuses in general. And certainly with HBCUs being a prime target, I do think that we should be hyper vigilant, not only about our education institutions like HBCU, but we've also seen just recently what tried to transpire in Congress. And so I think we need to be on high alert about our community institutions, whether they be education institutions, healthcare institutions, or even our general community nonprofits, which is something that I argued yesterday on the show to talk to people about. Take that disappointment that you may feel, that anger about what happened in the election, and double down into our communities. And there is an open invitation from community organizations, from education institutions, for people to come in and be a part of making sure that we have sustainable institutions in our community that are controlled by us, that we maintain because they are important to the structure of and the future of our community. And so everybody needs to go back and accept that open invitation to be engaged and involved so that we can maintain these institutions, which are vital to our work on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And Julian, given your experience at the college level, given your experience as an economist, given your experience of what happens on these campuses and how things go down, what do you think is going to happen next as it relates to Tennessee State University?
Probably the State Board of Education is going to come in and they'll try to make some moves. People politically need to be ready for that and be ready to fight back. But that's the next step, is that the State Board of Education is saying that the college is unstable. I think the least of their concerns should be Dr. Glover's exit package. Everybody gets one. I got one. It wasn't $800,000, but whatever. I didn't work for 10 years. But that's customary in higher education, that someone would get an exit package. Focusing on that as opposed to focusing on the ways that the state of Tennessee has systematically underfunded Tennessee State is really what needs to happen. But I do think that the State Board of Education will make some moves. As we know, about a year ago, the governor switched up who was on the state board, taking some people off who were more friendly to TSU and basically stacking it with Republican anti-Black folks. And so TSU alums and others need, and all of us really, need to listen to the clarion call and push back. But it's very likely that there will be some administrative changes depending on who is on the education committee of the legislature. It could go through or not. It is a blow to HBCU land and HBCU focus. It is a blow. But at the same time, we know that we do not roll over and play dead. We fight. We fight. We fight. And there are tens of thousands of TSU alums of both parties who can make a difference. This is going to require activism. This is going to require pushback. And so take that thing from up under me over Congo about paying the former president $800,000. That's not the issue. That is truly not the issue. The system worked there for more than 10 years, and most people have that in their contract. The issue is how the state of Tennessee has been systematically underfunding this university and then standing back. It's like you lit a match, you stand back, oh, how do we get a fire? Well, dude, you lit the match. And they've been lighting the match on Black education ever since we had this state land grant university that a brilliant sister had lifted up and gotten accreditations that they didn't ever have before.
Well, we are definitely going to be keeping an eye on this on Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. And we just have to make sure that we're telling the story because, once again, we're not seeing this anywhere else. So we're going to be back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network right here with Roland Martin on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings. We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Hello, I'm Jamia Pugh. I am from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, just an hour right outside of Philadelphia.
My name is Jasmine Pugh. I'm also from Coatesville, Pennsylvania.
You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay right here.
In an historic move, the Palm Springs, California City Council voted unanimously to approve a settlement offer for the surviving former residents and descendants of a Black and Latino neighborhood that the city burned to the ground 60 years ago to make way for commercial development. Civil rights attorney Ariva Martin joins us from Los Angeles to discuss this multi-million-dollar settlement. Ariva, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Glad to be in conversation with you.
Oh, absolutely. And you've been doing tireless work across this country on the issue of reparations, as well as so much other activism. But this particular one, I know we spoke about recently. Can you just share your thoughts about this settlement and how long it's taken to get here and how the community is feeling?
The community is elated. You recall the beginning of this journey. I think Dr. Omikango Dibinga, you have, and I have been in conversation on my show many times about Section 14 Palm Springs. This was a community that was really forgotten about. It was written out of the history of Palm Springs. Many people don't even know that they're African Americans and Latinos that were early settlers in Palm Springs. Many Black folks moving from the South to escape the Jim Crow era of the South, looking for the American dream, came into Palm Springs and helped to provide the labor that was needed to build this city into the desert oasis that it is today. They also provided the workforce for the rich and famous that made Palm Springs their playground. They were the cooks, the nannies, the chefs, the drivers, and all of the staff that's needed to support the Hollywood types from Lucille Ball to Frank Sinatra to Gene Autry. And when the city no longer wanted that community in its downtown, wanted to capitalize on some changes in federal law that would allow the indigenous tribe that owned the land, Section 14, to have extended leases on the land, the city pretty much hatched a plan to remove this community, to burn it down, to demolish it. and it upended what had been a thriving community of African Americans, Latinos, and other minorities who couldn't live anyplace else in Palm Springs because of racially restrictive covenants. And it's important to note that there were many, many activists throughout the last 6 decades that tried to get recognition for the contributions of these men and women, tried to get the city to acknowledge their humanity and their dignity, and all of those efforts failed. So when you think about the decades old struggle that has been the history of this journey, and to think that this movement, led primarily by seniors in their 70s and 80s, what they were able to accomplish with this agreement with the city in a 5-0 vote is quite remarkable.
And we see so many stories about Black Wall Street, and so many stories historically about cities that were razed to the ground, and people try to get efforts to be recognized and the like. But we're talking about something as recent as the 1960s, and people don't realize that that history is so close to us. How does it feel when you see that people are actually getting this acknowledgement when other parts of the country, say with our two remaining survivors of Black Wall Street, they're still not getting the type of respect and recognition that they deserve? Is it a bittersweet type of situation? Do we continue to use this as motivation to keep push forward? How are you seeing that?
Well, it's definitely encouraging, right? Because we know whenever you break a ceiling, whenever you break a glass ceiling, whenever you do something that was thought to be impossible and you make the impossible possible, you know what that means in terms of other communities. And the thing that's so remarkable about this matter, Dr. Dominguez, these cases, as we saw recently in the Tulsa, Oklahoma case, they don't fit into the legal framework that currently exists in our country. Because these matters happened so many decades ago, you don't have the traditional route to go into court and file an action because of statutes of limitations. Those statutes bar these types of claims. So this work is legal in part, but I call this movement work. And the lawyers and the activists that are on the front line, like myself, doing this work, understand that this is a collective body of work, a collective body of people that have to come together to move this work forward. And yes, I wish there was a different outcome in Tulsa, but I'm encouraged. They have a new mayor in that city. And I'm encouraged by some of the local efforts we've seen all around the country.
And one more question before I turn it over to the panel. It seems like after the fees and everything comes down, it's going to come out to about $4,000 per individual. And many people who are involved in this.
Let me correct you, Dr. Dominguez. That's not a quote from me. That's not a quote from any of the plaintiffs. That's some math done by someone, I don't know who, but that is not, there's been zero determination about the distribution of the cash portion of this agreement.
And so that even makes my question even more important, because it seems at the end of the day that regardless of how much they resolve it for, it's really about something deeper than that.
Oh, absolutely. This was never about money. Like I said, this whole process exists outside the legal system. So we knew going in that we would not have the traditional kind of cases that you would have. Let's say if you walked outside your door and got hit by a car and you filed a personal injury claim. You would have rights and entitlements based on filing that claim timely, not being barred by the statute of limitation. My clients, took a year to find a lawyer. They called law firm after law firm, lawyer after lawyer, and they kept getting no, because the lawyers don't take cases that happened 60 years ago because you can't get recovery for those kinds of cases. And most of the clients don't have the financial wherewithal to pay the attorney along the way. So we knew that this was not going to be about money. This was always about recognition. It was always about building back a community that had been decimated by this racial atrocity. It was about forcing the city to recognize, acknowledge, and honor the humanity and the dignity of this community. So for us, the $6 million or so restitution is like $600 million, because that's how against the odds this case was in terms of getting a dime. I mean, going into this, there was no real legal framework for us to make a financial recovery. So that makes the victory even more significant. And my clients are just ecstatic about the way they were able to hang together, stay together, work together, build strong alliances and strong coalitions, and cross the finish line.
Eljoy, your question for Aviva Martin.
You know, like you mentioned, there are states all across the country that are embarking on their own reparations work. And here in the state of New York, I was part of the coalition that led to the passage and the implementation of setting up a reparations commission for the state of New York. I wonder if you could share, as these commissions start doing their work, from your experience, what should not the lawyers or the legislators, but what should the average person who may be watching with maybe skepticism about the process, how should they engage, or what should they expect to participate in?
Well, they should expect, LaJoy, a very long and arduous battle. This is not work for the faint of heart. This is not, again, like I keep using that personal injury example. This isn't, file a lawsuit, establish liability, establish your damages, and then, expect some kind of settlement, mediation, or maybe even a jury trial. It's not that. It's not like the police brutality cases that we see. It's not like some of the other civil rights cases that you see in the news. These cases are very, very complex. There are often lots of participants, most of whom are dead, because we're talking about things that have happened so long ago. And in many cases, the narrative that has been written, like in the case of Palm Springs, California, is one that demonizes the individuals who are, in fact, the victims. So you're not only fighting with a legal system that is hostile and a legislature oftentimes that's hostile, you're also fighting a narrative. In Palm Springs, they had labeled my clients squatters. They had labeled their community, an eyesore, public nuisance. So we were having to overcome a media narrative that had taken place and that had become quite entrenched in the community for over 60 years. So when you go into a community that has been told you have no value, you have no worth, we've erased you from our history, and the media has bought into that, and they've been telling the story that way for so long. You can imagine how long it takes to change the hearts, the minds, the psyche, and even the public narrative.
Yeah.
Julianne.
Hey, Ariva. Second time talking today. And thank you. Again, congratulations. I'm just over the moon about the settlement. Over the moon about the work, and just please give Pearl Devers, one of the original whatever she was, what original occupants, my love and my
she was a survivor, she was an organizer. At times she was Mama Pearl. I mean, she was the glue that kept this whole community together through this process.
She's a force to be reckoned with. She really is a force to be reckoned with. I want to talk about two parts of what's just happened. You talked about erasing the Black and brown presence in Palm Springs, but one of the parts of the settlement is going to be a monument of those people. So I want you to talk about that a little bit more. And then in terms of the money, the first piece of it is the first piece. There's a possibility of more. It's not about the money. But we look at the wealth gap in these United States. Part of the wealth gap is a function of what's happened here. When I think of Pearl's story, her dad built their house with his hands. All those people had to leave. Sometimes they went to work, and when they came back, their houses had been burnt down. So that's the basis of the wealth gap, is the taking of Black property. So when we look at that, talk about part two. There's a possibility of more of a settlement. You got part one, first of all, the monument, then secondly, part two of the settlement.
Great question, Julianne. And you know, in Evanston, after the city council in Evanston set aside money for housing remediation for redlining of those Black residents of Evanston, churches and clergy came together in Evanston, and other foundations came together, and they now have distributed, I believe, over $5 million additional dollars. So you are so right. The possibility is ripe. Section 14 Survivors is a 501c3 nonprofit. I was instrumental in helping them raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund this effort. But they are now poised to seek state funding, local funding, and foundation funding. They can now be the repository of other reparations funding. I can see clearly the indigenous tribe, now that the matter is settled, also looking to maybe make contributions to the nonprofit. So this is, in many ways, just the beginning of the opportunities for there to be additional revenue donated to the nonprofit that can be distributed to the survivors and the descendants. The monument, as you will recall, Julianne, as you were coming into Palm Springs, that was something we heard over and over and over again during our listening sessions, is that we come to this city and there's nothing that reflects our contributions. And that's why monuments and public art are so important, because they say to tourists, they say to residents, they say to future generations, this community was here. They had a critical role in the building of this community. And Ms. Pearl and others, the 70, 80-year-old activists, they're going to pass on. We're all going to pass on. But that monument will live on, in infinity. And folks, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, will get to read about these pioneers and pay honor and tribute to them. So we're so excited about that, because building a community back, which is a lot of what we've been doing too, is really community building. And now for them to be able to go to a place and show their grandkids, here's your grandfather. He was a carpenter. He helped to build this city. And there's going to be a park renamed for the survivors, and to say, here it's again something that's a part of the city's fabric that recognizes there's a day of remembrance, and there's a commitment to help build a racial and cultural healing center. So there are so many opportunities beyond this initial agreement that will address that issue of generational wealth building as well as community building.
Ariva Martin, thank you so much for not only what you're doing here, but what you're doing across the country. It's great. It's so great to be on the opposite side of this conversation. You do incredible work that you're doing for Ariva Martin in real time on KBLA as well. I just wish you continued success. And you can always call on the Black Star Network whenever you got updates for us. We are here for that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to your whole panel. Be well.
No doubt. All right, we'll be right back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Dion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
The family of a Black Las Vegas man killed by police after calling for help during a home invasion wants the cop who pulled the trigger charged. On Tuesday, November 12th, 43-year-old Brandon Durham called 911 to report that two people were shooting into his home, where he lived with his 15-year-old daughter, and they were attempting to break in. Durham later told 911 dispatchers that the suspects had entered his residence and he planned to lock himself in the bathroom. This happened when the 3 Las Vegas Metropolitan police officers responded to the scene and kicked the door open to Durham's home. Before we show you the video, we want to warn you it is disturbing. Now is the time for you to turn away.
Medium build, red beanie, wearing a black sweatshirt and dark colored pants.
Hey, they said they made entry. We got to go in there.
Yeah, we gotta do it. Hey, one, we have a broken window and we're gonna make entry. Hey, kick it!
Metro Police! Metro Police! Metro Police! Metro Police! Hey, drop the knife! Drop the knife! Put your hands up!
Civil rights attorney Lee Merritt said this about the incident during today's news conference.
We believe, and this is the conversation that we had with the district attorney's office today, that an arrest warrant should be issued immediately for the arrest of Officer Alexander Bookman, of Officer Alexander Bookman. Today earlier, the assailant, the suspect who had entered the home illegally, was supposed to be arraigned and refused to come down for arraignment. We appreciate that the court issued an order demanding that the suspect be brought to court by any means necessary in a week's time. We will be here with the Durham family at the subsequent meeting next week to ensure that the criminal process goes forward, both against the assailant who entered the property, the reason that police were called. But when officers enter someone's home, they have a legal obligation, a constitutional obligation to respect the rights of the resident. That's when a citizen's rights is at its highest. And in this case, we had an absolute tragedy occur. And so we're here to answer questions. We're here to put out our statement to the public. We thank everyone who's called the district attorney's office. You have gotten his attention. He is investigating the case. He is not prepared, based on our conversation today, and we're happy to answer questions about it. But he was not prepared today to take the immediate and swift action that we would like to see take place in the form of the arrest of the officer. However, he did explain to the family the process that this office goes through before presenting a criminal indictment to a grand jury, an opportunity for a criminal indictment against the officer to a grand jury. We were able to speak with the prosecutors involved in both cases, both of the suspect and of the officer-involved shooting. And we are looking forward to a criminal accountability on both sides.
Eljoy, we see a situation here where a man is trying to defend his home. Not only is he trying to defend his home, but he called the police and basically gave them a play-by-play of what was going down. And yet still, within his own home, he loses his own life trying to defend his home with his daughter in the home. When people have these conversations about police misconduct and police brutality, and people are not trying to hear us, these are the types of stories that we're talking about.
Yeah, first my my condolences and my heart to the family, and particularly his young daughter, who, if you're mentioning saying was in the home as well, just the trauma. And I hope that she is receiving all of the support that is necessary along with the family as well. This is a very tragic story, and so many instances that we can point out where there are failures here in terms of the safety of the public, and particularly the safety of Black people in our society. To call 911 to give information, there's the question of what information was communicated. But more importantly, is an officer arriving on the scene and just watching that unfold. And while he is yelling commands, is there time to really assess the situation of what is happening, in addition to what you've been told leading up to arriving at the home? And so this is very tragic for this family. And again, all of our support and encouragement for that family dealing with this at this immediate term. But there's also this greater failure to the public that, one, decreases the amount of times that people even feel comfortable calling 911 for an emergency situation. And so then who do you call? Two, that it needs to be swift and rapid justice, so that people feel some kind of, whether you want to call it an accident or malpractice, whatever you want to call it, but that we will immediately address the issue so that we do not lose further confidence in the system that is supposed to protect everyone. And, we continue to see these stories, and it just piles up the distrust that our communities have with law enforcement because of the outcomes of this.
And Julian, just to tie this to the election and national stories, I hear people say, Democrats have to learn to speak to normal people. They just care about their schools and how to feed their kids, and they want to be safe in their neighborhoods. But they never talk about who in our communities many of us feel the need to be safe from, to be protected from. They just talk about, we just need the police on the streets, but they never add the part that for us, simple occurrences to major issues like this can lead to our dying.
Let me exhale for just a moment. I mean, this whole story is so jarring. First of all, the man called the police, which means he had enough faith in the police to call the police, to think that they would make a difference. He said, I'm going to be in my bathroom, locked in. He said, my child is here with me. What part of that did they not understand? So they come and they kill him, and they have excuses, and they always have excuses, but they have excuses. It was an accident. It didn't happen. Over Congo, we have seen so many of these stories. It's like, what do the kids say? Something about rewind. I forget what they say. But anyway, something about, let's just do it again. We're going to do it again. And they're going to do it again. The issue, when you connect this back to the election, is you're having two kinds of people who hear public safety in two different ways. So you have a whole bunch of white folks who are grabbing their pearls and talking about they're afraid of whatever. And you have a whole bunch of Black people who not grabbing their pearls because we've never grabbed our pearls. What we've been saying is we just want the same kind of protection that others have. We want safety. We want the opportunity. And there are so many Black people who are afraid to call the police because when we do, the results are not always good. You call on a mentally ill relative who's showing out, they did. You call on, I have a friend who unfortunately was in a battering situation. She didn't want to call the police on her boo, but I told her, I said, you know what? This bro needs to be stopped. He got shot in front of her. She didn't want him shot. She just wanted him removed from the property. And that's what she said is remove him from the property. So many of us do not trust the police because the police do not think that we're human beings. See, it breaks all the way down to that. When you talk about some of the cases we've talked about on this program, somebody being beaten because they ran a light, beaten darn near to death because they ran a light. You know, it's like body blows every time it happens. All of us are sitting there holding our belly saying, no, no, not again. But it keeps happening again and again and again. That's why the George Floyd Act is so important. President Biden has some opportunities. He only has 2 months left, maybe a month and a half, 2 months left to be president. He can make that an executive order. Now, Mr. Trump is likely to reverse the order, but it would be a statement of solidarity. He could make an executive order on reparations. Yeah, the orange man would reverse it, but it would be a statement of solidarity. He has an opportunity to make a difference. And every time we see a case like this, Brother Domingo, every time we see a case like this, there is a howl coming out of the wilderness saying, how long, how long, how long? And I suspect that as the next 2 years, because I'm hoping that we have opportunities with the Congress in 2026, but as we see case after case after case like this, I'm hoping that people will say, no, enough, we must resist. Because you know, that orange man wants to indemnify police officers from the things that they've done. So no, it literally, I wish I had looked away when you said look away, but I'm grown, so I got to look at it. But all I have to say is this stuff takes you by your neck, by your throat, and pulls you up and says, how long? How long? There have been 5,000 documented lynchings in these United States. You know, it's about a lynching thing today. 5,000 documented lynchings, but these are also other kinds of results of lynching culture. You can do whatever you want to a Black person and have no consequence.
His name was Brandon Durham. You need to say his name. I'm so appreciative that Lee Merritt is on the case. And Merritt, if you're listening, please come to us at the Black Star Network with any updates as we continue to uplift this man, his story, and his family. We will have updates for you as we get them. I'm going to take a quick break right now. You're listening to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting. We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
I'm Russell L. Honoré, Lieutenant General, United States Army, retired, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
In North Carolina, the state attorney general's office plans to look into allegations about the conduct of the Saint Augustine's University Board of Trustees. This announcement comes after a judge dismissed a lawsuit filed by a group of alumni known as Save SAU against the university's Board of Trustees. The group sued the board, alleging that Brian Boulware, chairman of the St. Augustine University Board of Trustees, benefited from the brokerage fee paid by the school on a $7 million loan, allowed wire transfers for hundreds of thousands of dollars with no paperwork, and left the university on the brink of losing its accreditation, and with it, federal funding nearly 8 in 10 students depend on. Associate Professor Dr. Derek L. Sauls joins us now from Raleigh. And Dr. Sauls, wow.
I know.
I mean, when you see these types of stories and you almost want to laugh to prevent from crying, because these issues are so serious. And when you talk about 8 of 10 students depending on this money, these are real problems that people just don't want to discuss.
Well, this is true, and the sad thing about it, we have so many still first generations that need to go to college, and the whole mission statement of Saint Augustine University for to be there for the downtrodden and those are disenfranchised. And like they say, like you used to have last chance universities. For some of them, this is their last chance, and here we are, at this crossroad, which is terrible.
And when you talk about it as people looking at it as the last chance, do you feel like it's that type of perception that makes people feel like they can just run amok and do whatever it is they want to do because nobody's going to care about this community?
I think it's indicative of our society now, where what has happened is that, you think about it. Back in the day, 30, 40, maybe 50 years ago, parents, who would never, even finish high school took their children to HBCUs. And when they dropped them off, they told the teachers that, hey, look, I've taken my children as far as I could go. I'm giving them to you. So now that you can take them to that next level, and, give them the opportunities in which I never had. And that was specifically, especially here in North Carolina with the cadre of HBCUs that we have here, that it was, it was just impressive that, how people knew that their children had to get, just maybe 300 years away, away from the really captivity aspect of it, and then almost 100 years away from slavery. Now we have a chance, to get to another level in life, and now we have our knees cut, our feet cut up from all the way up from the feet all the way up to the knees is cut off, and all we're doing is dangling now, waiting for something else to happen.
And it seems as it's looking right now that there's just no accountability. It seems like Boulware is getting off scot-free, and it seems like when it comes down to it, the people who are on the ground, people at the university are being left hanging right now. How is this affecting the energy and the mood on the campus?
Well, initially, what came about is that a lot of alumni and just people in general, were thinking that, hey, look, Save SAU is suing the school, and it was put out there. It was like a PR campaign to counteract us that we're suing the school. We were never suing the school. We noticed that in order for the school to be effective and go forward, that we need to have a transition in the board. And like anything else, you throw a couple of bad apples in the barrel, the rest of rest that is that most of the other bad apples are going to become bad. But we didn't have a lot of bad apples on the board. We just have some manipulative situations on the board. And once we were able to analyze and see exactly what was going on the board, we said, well, look, we just can't go and just surgically excise them off the board. First, we get the board to be transitioned out. And then, like anything else, those that want to be on the board, you will be available to, come back on the board once we sift through and see exactly what your aims are, and do you really understand the true, art of sacrifice and the mission statement to get the university to the next level. But we ended up at a point where we had, just basically go to court, and the court threw it out because they said we didn't have good standing, because we found out that, this board of trustees basically had a total autonomy, where they had initially about 100 and some pages of bylaws for the board, and now it's whittled down to about 30 pages. If you really go and you dig deep within that, you will see where basically They were maneuvering to get to a point where with this total autonomy, they could pretty much do what they want to do. And when we went to court, they said that we needed somebody who was on the board to bring this suit forward, because they was, that person could come forth and say, hey, look, I was on the board and I was injured. So that way we would have standing. So basically, through that, the judge made, her decision that we didn't have standing because, the board has total autonomy. But the beauty of it is that our lawyer, Eric, he came out and stated that, said, well, if it's being thrown out because we don't have standing, there's another alternative, because in the state of North Carolina, the attorney general can take precedence and step in and totally go in and do a forensic analysis of exactly what has happened. And we thought it was going to be a while before the attorney general got involved. But the interesting thing is that, before the ink dried on the decision, that evening, a news spokesman named Gallagher, he reported on WRL that the attorney general's office is looking into it. And next thing you know, the next day, the attorney general said, hey, look, we're boots on the ground. Basically, I'm finding out that they've been watching this situation the whole time and had to see exactly how it unfolds so they would know exactly what to do and how to do. Because now, if you look at the audit, even in the audit, it's stated in the audit for 2022, is that the people who did the audit said it's kind of strange that all of a sudden there were $350,000 transfers, cash disbursements and more, accounting to almost $10 million. And there are no records to follow up on what happened. So in the military terms, we used to say somebody's been scrubbing the records. So in the process of just this audit in itself, it's implicated that something went wrong. Now I got a true feeling that the Attorney General's office is going to ask the same question. What went wrong, how it went wrong, and when it went wrong? Because we gave the board a chance to say, hey, look, we're going to step aside and we're going to try to rebuild the university. But instead, they try to give us a black eye. But I'm not worried about getting a black eye, because there's a black eye of, like John Lewis said, this is good trouble. It'll be a good black eye, because it's not about me. It's about paying it forward for those who are still disenfranchised and downtrodden and sticking with the mission of Saint Augustine University and getting to that next level.
And are there questions being asked or investigated about where this money actually went?
Some people have some ideas of where it went, because like anything else, they were wire transfers. And even though sometimes people think they get off, wire transfers, forensic, investigation, it can find out where it was sent, how it was sent, and when it was sent. And seeing that the Attorney General office is involved in this now, there's only so many things that I can say and others can say. We have to sit back and wait and see what happens when the next shoe drops. But we know when it drops, it's going to drop heavy. It's just one of those things that, there are some things that are there. And that's all I can say at this point in time. There's some things that are there, and it's more than just a smoking gun. Some bullets had struck because of the process of striking. What has happened with the predatory loan situation coming in there, and still, there's been, there are faculty that haven't gotten paid, the staff that hasn't gotten paid.
Wow. And so where do you stand as it relates to the threat of potentially losing accreditation? Because obviously that's a major part of this as well. Are you fearful of that? Is this something that's going to happen much later down the road in terms of when this will actually be taken up? Where does the accreditation part of this stand?
See, what people got to understand, that when all of a sudden, the SACs reversed their decision, they only reversed their decision until they had a chance to come back on campus and totally review the fiduciary management on campus. And now the first week of December, SACs is going to meet and say, okay, the Saint Augustine University do what they're supposed to do, for the accreditation to stay in place. I'm a firm advocate, but once the Attorney General office gets in there and they see what has happened the past several years with the bad fiduciary management and, the oversight of the board, where they supposed to have oversight, but they were overbearing. I think that at that point in time, SACs is going to be in a position where they say, hey, look, the university academically was strong, because I taught at the university and I was there, boots on the ground. And there are great students that have come out of there and doing great things. They're going to say, hey, look, this is my hope. And, as I go forward, the SAC COC will look at it and say, hey, look, the university, academically strong. We went in there looking at fiduciary management because, Everett Ward had gotten them off SAC's probation. Okay. And now, once Everett Ward got them off SAC's probation, then they come in on March 26th, 2020, and tell Everett Ward, we don't need you anymore. It's time for you to go. The Board of Trustees. Why would you get rid of a man who built a bridge with the Episcopalian Church, got them back actively involved, and got a university finally get into a firm foundation financially, then you tell him to leave. So now I'm looking at the chess game, and in the process of looking at the chess game, hopefully Sachs will look at this chess game and say, hey, look, the people who were good-hearted there, the faculty and staff and administration who had good hearts that were there, were trying to make things happen. There was a chess game going on that they did not know about, and they were being maneuvered. And put in different situations, and also information was shielded from them, and sometimes they were given bad information to make others look like they were enemies. But no, they weren't the enemies. It was the fact that the chess game, and St. Augustine is in checkmate right now. So now in December we're going to find out what was Sachs going to say. But the aspect I'm thinking, if the Attorney General comes in, does its investigation, and say, hey, look, we telling the board the board needs to be reconstituted, and if the board's reconstituted, I'm praying that Sachs will will look at that and says, okay, we know it's going to take 3 years for any university got to have 3 years financial records. So I'm praying that Sachs COC will say, okay, the board is left, they reconstitute the board, and they got people in place to get the university back into its flagship status. As a as an HBCU and a university overall, because so many great people have come out of that university, they will say, okay, let's reevaluate this accreditation with St. Augustine's. Academically, it was strong. Let's give them 3 to 5 years to get back on a firm foundation. I can live with that because I myself, even though I'm in the fourth quarter of life, I will go back there and teach. I would have no problem going back, to teach there and try to, put things back in place, that would, have been torn down since the accreditation and the loss of the students. So, with that in hand, maybe we can get to a point where Sachs COC will say, well, we never made a decision like that before. But now's the time, because now's the time where people are realizing that, we do make mistakes. Things do happen. Some things are out of our control. And that was out of our control. Because the faculty and staff and administration, we fought a good fight. Even some of the presidents fought a good fight. But you could not go up against the board of trustees because there were manipulative things going on behind the scene, and the chess game was getting played, and we didn't know that we were the pawns being used in the chess game. So now going forward, I hope, once the Attorney General makes a decision, the board's reconstituted, we get the board reconstituted, get the faith of the people back in with us, and the community back with us, and the alumni back with us, because even with the alumni, some of them have been sitting on the fence saying, no, this can't be happening. Save SU is suing the school. No, we want to reconstitute the board. Because we put out a resolution back in January, and we have numerous signatures on that resolution where people were supporting what we were doing, because we said we want to reconstitute that board from day one in January. We didn't say we want to sue the school, because we have people on Save SCU who have been actively involved in working in university. They were there feeding when things started going south. And vendors started walking away. The grass wasn't getting cut. The kids weren't getting, no food. It was Save SAU and Falcons Unite that went on that campus. Especially Falcons Unite. That's did the I call the Macedonian call, where they said, "Hey, look, we need you. Come back home." And people started donating, giving, and they were feeding kids to get them to the end of the semester. Because they were very downtrodden and heartbroken, and one of the young men in Falcons Unite had a son that was there. And he's had to transfer to another school, but his daddy finished from St. Augustine University. Him being the oldest son, he wanted to finish from St. Augustine University, but he couldn't because of the situation. And I know he's bleeding at this time, because that's catastrophic. I know if it was my son, I would be like, hey, we got a problem here. But it has to be done in the right way, because at the end of the day, it's about Save St. Augustine's University.
Dr. Sauls, I'd like you to stick around. I want to sneak in a quick break and then come back with some questions for the panel, if that's okay.
Okay.
We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
And we are back with Dr. Sauls talking about the Save SAU campaign. And I want to turn it over to the panel. Dr. Malveaux, do you have a question for Dr. Sauls?
Absolutely. Hey, bro, how you doing?
I'm okay, and you?
I'm good. Former North Carolina HBCU president. So
okay,
I feel you've been at college 2007 to 2012.
Yes, I'm quite familiar with that situation too. Yes.
Well, we were able to get our accreditation. The issue is SACS. I mean, there are many issues, but the whole accreditation piece, if you don't have accreditation, you cannot get federal student loan money. Students cannot get loans, and that becomes the crux of it. I think that SACS is an intrinsically political organization, and I think they got some racism up in there. But I just say that, I don't work there no more. But there's a racism up in there. But it also seems that in this case at St. Aug's, there are a series of internal issues that have caused this crisis that you're dealing with. The Save SAU group seems like a good group, but at the same time, there's always a question of, is there another path? So I mean, Save SAU, great organization, good intentions, but does this, do we look like crabs in a barrel when this happens? Is there another way to reconstitute the board? And I do think that SACS could play a role in reconstituting the board. They could say, y'all don't have to have this board, have another one. They've done that in other universities. So just question, crabs in a barrel, is there another way?
Okay, when it comes to crabs in a barrel, I in particular knew there were certain people that if they were to step down from the board, I would have no problem, having the whole board removed. But, a couple of them dug in their heels. I'm not at liberty to say at this time, a couple of them dug in their heels. So when they dug in their heels, and I truly understand that because I'll tell you a personal situation where we had a Dr. Gaddis Falcon there who was an interim president. And they were talking about, well, bring somebody else to take him out. But see, Dr. Gaddis Falcon was over at Shaw University, and I watched him while he was over at Shaw University. He implemented a lot of programs over there, at Shaw University, and especially in exercise science, fitness, and athlete. Back then, athletic training. But now you have to go pre-athletic training because the athletic training programs have gone to the master's level. So I watched him, and he's also alumni, and he's good-hearted. So then when he came over there, it was basically like, hey, look. We want you to, basically the board said, we want you to do a certain situation. And he said, no, I have to respect that person highly. And when he didn't do that, it was like, look, you're going to have to go. So I knew some people on the board. I went and talked to one in particular. I said, look, man, y'all need to relax. Falcon's good. Give him another year to help, level us out because we still weren't broken at that point in time because Ward had just left and we still in a pretty good financial, situation, but, they decided, especially this one particular person approached me. So I'm going to tell you like this. We got the votes to get rid of him. And when we get rid of him, you can go right behind him. I know that personally. So when they say crabs in a barrel, man, I'm like Deion Sanders. I kept the receipts. Because, I saw this day coming. I kept my receipts. So now with my receipts, I'm sitting back, in a way, I tell some of the people in Save SEU, I feel kind of bad because it's personal to me. Even though I never went to a HBCU, I taught there at Saint Augustine University for 10 years. And then in the early 90s, I taught there for 4 years as adjunct faculty. I have a passion for HBCUs because I grew up in Boston. There are no HBCUs in Boston. If we had had a HBCU in Massachusetts, I think a lot of the people up there would have been way down the road because it's that passion, that caring that you find at HBCU that really cares and molds and makes their students. Because you take the imperfect student, and then by the time they hit their junior year, they're ready to take off. And when I say take off, I had a young lady who came there with a 1.7 grade point average. And she said, "Can I get the public health scholarship?" I said, "Baby, I'm going to tell you, you got to have a 2.5. She said, "Please, Dr. Saw." I said, "I tell you what, we're going to take it on a semester by semester basis." That January, she came to me. She said, "I don't need the money now." I said, "What, you quit school?" I got ready to start crying. She said, "No, I got a presidential scholarship." She went on and finished with a 3.5 grade point average, went on, got a full scholarship to UNCG, then came back to teach at St. Augustine University before all this happened. So it's not really crabs in the barrel. It's just that some demanding people that were on the board that were self-serving. And narcissists also, which is crazy because I would like to sit back and say, look at the laurels and this and that, but I know that hey, we only here for it. We're time travelers, so all we can do is pay it forward. And when I say pay it forward, I look at how my children been blessed going to college. I want other people's children to be blessed going to college, so that way there'd be a cadre of a lot of kids that are out there that have gone to college, so there'd be some commonality there about building the kingdom of God. So crabs in the barrel, no, this ain't a crabs in the barrel. Some people have alluded to, look, you being a crabs in the barrel, you should have sat on the sideline and waited till we got all this okay, and then and then we could have sat down and worked this out. It wasn't orchestrated like that. It was basically, let me put people in position in this chess game so I can go ahead on and put them in checkmate.
Eljoy, your question.
Black violence, so bro, it's black on black violence when the board and the alums. Really, I agree with you like 97%, but there's an element of black on black violence here. There's some people who are TSU alums or who board members who do not have the best interests of the college in mind.
So before you answer that, Eljoy, I want you to get your question in as well. And Dr. Souls, feel free to wrap in your answers to both based on what Dr. Malveaux said as well. Eljoy?
Okay.
Yeah, just as you're wrapping up and responding to Dr. Malveaux, would love to hear also how you and others believe that the wider public, the wider community can support the students during this process.
Okay, what has happened, since there's no longer any Pell Grant there at the university, the students, number of students have dropped. So I have been watching the situation at hand. So basically, when you have a situation like this, it's like, who do you get, in school to take to the next level? So I think, watching the number of students there and, the level of students there, most of them are seniors, what they're trying to do while they still have their accreditation, get those students graduated. And then, I guess they're going to try to figure out, what is the next step. But there's some, once the Attorney General gets involved, you'll find in the upcoming weeks or maybe upcoming months, there were some behind the scenes reasons why there was some bad fiduciary management. I'm not at liberty to say it this time, but then, that's why I say it's not, black on black violence. It's just the fact that, some alumni became on the board became self-serving. And like anything else, when you become self-serving, you got to, figure out whose you are and what you are. And I said, if you truly are on the board and you trust in God. And the thing is, contact some of the board members and ask them how much money have they given to St. Augustine's University. We can start there because I talked with the foundation person, the person that raises money, institutional, advancement. I said, can I get a rundown on what the board gives? And he said, man, you'd be surprised. Some of them, they don't give nothing. They just, when they go to CIAA, they just have a good time on the university's dime. So that's where we at. And then when it comes to, the Pell Grants, things of that nature, and the students going forward, we're gonna try to work this out. If we can work this out, and next fall, with Sachs coming back, I know you say Sachs, maybe some elements of racism in there. We got to battle against that. We got to play just as hard as they hard as they do, and if we can get the alumni to really galvanize, because the alumni association's been pretty much sitting on the sideline, because the president has them sitting on the sideline. Where if she had come about and say, "Hey, look, this is a rallying cry. This is something we have to do," but then I think, they're looking at other situations where some, places they disband alumni associations. And so we just have to try to figure this out. But it's not black on black crime. And when it comes to the students, we still have Falcons Unite that does a monumental job of seeing what students, need, what they need, and applying the needs of those, to help them out. If they need a plane ticket back home or bus ticket, things of that nature, even when it comes to food. And even when the faculty and staff weren't getting paid, some of them were calling Falcons Unite, and we would get together and I said, we would just say, oh, who can give what, when, how much can you give? And whatever we can give, we just divvy it out and make sure people stay in their apartment. Because there are people, lost their, their apartments, they've lost their, mortgages, they housing mortgage, they lost their homes, cars, and a lot of those people have really fallen behind, and it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that.
Well, as a person who was born and raised in Boston, I definitely understand what you're talking about in terms of how we could have used some HBCU love. And I just really want to thank you for your continued efforts and work on this. And please do keep us updated so we can continue to broadcast and let people know what's going on, because other people should be talking about this, but they're not. But you have a home here at the Black Star Network. So please, thank you very much, Dr. Salz, for joining us. And we look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And we'll be right back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free-to-download, free-to-use, next-generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you helped build Fanbase. And we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
This is Essence Atkins.
Mr. Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon.
It's me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you watch.
You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
MSNBC's Morning Joe co-host Joe Scarborough and Amika Brzezinski, two of Trump's fiercest critics in the media, told their viewers Monday they had a face-to-face meeting last week with the convicted felon at Mar-a-Lago. They said it was an important opportunity for those who disagree to speak with each other.
Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade. that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different, and that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Viewers voiced their disgust on social media, saying the host only met with Trump to avoid being targeted for disagreeing with him. We should also note that Trump was a man who said he knew nothing about Project 2025, for example, but also recently appointed Brendan Carr, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. He wrote Project 2025's chapter on the FCC. Joy, I bring up that last point because in the work that you do in the spaces that you occupy, I know you're all about coalition building and talking to people who have diverse opinions. You can kind of build something together. But there's a difference between talking with somebody of a different political perspective versus somebody who is an outright liar and platforming him. You know, in the book on Tyranny by Tim Snyder, he talks about one of the challenges when a dictator comes into power is that the media acquiesces in advance, that people acquiesce in advance because they're afraid of basically the smoke. Am I off on this? As somebody who's out there in those streets, as somebody who works to build coalition and talk to people of different opinions, am I missing something here?
No, I found out about this when the team sent it to me that we were going to discuss it today, because I've long since stopped watching cable news because of, one, the 24-hour act as if we can't talk about any other story but these three things that happens on cable news, but also these types of things. And what it read like to me, just watching what played before me, it seems like this PR campaign that's being instituted. Don't believe anything that you've heard, even if you heard it from directly my mouth. I'm going to be a kinder, gentler, Trump in this administration. And it seems that is the talking point that a lot of people are running with and are attempting to get in good favor so that they are not shut out. When the bottom line is that people are trying to maintain the eyeballs and therefore maintain their dollars and cents, and making sure that they are not completely shut out from engaging in this administration that would boost their numbers back up since it has been dwindling. So I am not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. I am not falling for the kinder, gentler. I am going to believe a person who stood on stages, who stands before us on a regular basis, whether that's through his social, through his words, through his actions, and tells you exactly who he is. And so he can say all the live long day that he's not familiar with Project 2025, probably because he doesn't read. However, what is clear is that those who came up with it are familiar with him, and they are familiar enough to seek power and be in charge of institutions that they are deliberately wanting to be appointed to in order to destroy. So I would say to folks, and I've said to my membership and I say to others, believe people when they tell you who they are. And out of his own mouth, he has repeatedly told us that. And certainly other people who have clear agendas of dismantling a number of our democratic institutions, they know who he is and know how they can move their agendas forward. And that's what we need to pay attention to, not the PR stunt and the PR campaign, and for other people who are concerned about their own pockets and not the American people.
Yes, and Julian, one of the things I find interesting is that they talk about, and look, in my work, in the work that I do in my DEI spaces, my whole thing is about finding common ground, but it's about people who want to actually find the common ground. When I see these conversations about we need to learn how to talk to each other and so on and so forth, these guys have no interest in talking to us. It's always a matter of us having to go to them. And so when I look at this looks at a situation like it could be the exact same thing. It's like Trump won, everybody come to me now, even though I don't really give a damn about y'all anyway. How do you see this?
First of all, I remember when Mr. Trump said some really ugly things about Mika. She was bleeding from wherever, and just really distasteful things. I don't see how she, with a straight face, could have and pulling her daddy in there was like lowball. But I don't see how, with a straight face, after someone has denigrated her that way, to go and talk with him, and her husband also going to talk to him. But you know what, what Joy said was correct. People are trying to make sure that they're not cut out of the access. This is predatory capitalism at its best. What do I mean by that? These people want to make sure they're on MSNBC. They don't want to they want to keep their sponsors. They want to keep their access. They're Washington insiders. They still want to be Washington insiders. Don't be surprised if you don't see them turning up at the White House for some party or some event or something like that, because that's what's going to happen. Basically, they are, Areva Martin's husband has a word for it, and I forgot it. I was thinking about it when she was talking. But anyway, it's just about basically, for a better word, star effing. But there's a better word. He had a much better word. Ernest Martin. But anyway, the bottom line is they're scurrying for favor. They don't want to be left out. Scarborough has always been kind of more of a centrist. He's not a progressive. Mika a little bit more so. But that's not the point. The point is that what you're seeing is a lot of scrambling. I'll call him 47 because I don't want to call his name. We used to call him 45. Reverend Barbara and I used to call him 45, but 47 has said he's going to get revenge. He's going to get revenge. I got a call from a colleague after we did the State of the Black World Conference here in D.C. on Thursday last week. A brilliant job by Dr. Ron Daniels. And I said, of course, what I always say, with a little economic splice in there. And this sister called me and she says, and she's a Republican. She said, you need to be careful. I said, what? She said, they're watching all y'all. You need to be careful. I said, so what would you have me do? She said, I'm your friend. She was actually, I think she was on a Delta line before mine or after, I don't remember. But she's like, they're watching y'all. And I believe that so they're watching us. This is not going to change my ways or my days. But the fact is that he's promised retribution. He's going to get retribution. There are no firewalls between the Congress, the Senate, the court, and him. So given all that, he pretty much can do whatever he wants to do. And if you are pulling down few mil at MSNBC, and you used to be a congressperson, you were national security advisor's daughter, y'all want to stay in the in crowd. And so the way you're going to stay in the in crowd is to kiss behind. And that's what they've been doing. They've been kissing behind. I think it was a horrible, I think just do you, boo. But I don't think it doesn't give me any confidence in them. And I don't know if it gives any other people, their listeners, their viewers, any confidence in them either. Because what they're basically saying, he could talk about me like a dog. He could do this, he could do that. And I'm going to still go to Mar-a-Lago and kiss his behind. So I hope you like the taste of, when you kiss in the behind of someone whose diaper spilled. That's all I have to say.
So, Eljoy, something that you said had me thinking, so many of us are in this kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, this zone where we're so frustrated with the news and so on and so forth. You said that you gave your staff instructions about what they should be doing going forward. So kind of going off of that, what are your instructions in terms of how we should be dealing with situations like this, where we feel like our media networks that some of us may have favored were the face of the resistance or the face of some form of criticism, and they don't seem to do that anymore? We see the Washington Post and the LA Times that decided that they weren't going to endorse a candidate, and people felt like they were falling off as well, and they were acquiescing. What type of advice are you giving to your staff? And in addition to that, what advice would you give for us who are just feeling this sense of hurt by these, what many people are calling betrayals?
Yeah. I think it's important for you to invest your time and your eyeballs into institutions that serve you. And for me, these institutions are entertainment institutions. They are, as Dr. Malveaux said, they are part of the system of predatory capitalism. They are trying to maintain eyeballs in order to maintain ad revenue, in order to increase shareholder revenue. That's what they're for. And so once you understand that, then you can detach yourself from this personal connection that we seem to have built with some of the folks that are reporting quote unquote news. I remember a time, my grandmother, and watching news with my grandmother, she watched a particular channel because she trusted the news from that particular person that, they were giving her facts, they were giving her the information. If someone breaks that trust, right? So you then develop this personal relationship. You feel like this person is delivering the news directly to Eljoy, right? That they're thinking of you as they are putting their stories together and having this conversation. For me, that has been broken. There is, I'm taking my eyeballs, I'm taking my support to institutions that are going to serve me in one way and giving me the pure facts, and giving me news and not heavy on their opinion. Before you give me opinion, tell me what happened first. And we see a lot we've become accustomed to this cable news piece that we're in, where people are just giving you their opinion on things before they actually give you what happened, what the facts are. And so with that, I'm divesting from those institutions and instead investing in local news, in community news, in, NPR and sort of other places that can give me, and I don't want just an echo chamber. Let me, make sure that people understand that, because I read from 36 different sources every morning for my 2 hours in reading news. I read from 36 different sources, some that are more progressive leaning, some that are more conservative leaning, just to understand what is happening all across the country. And I think we don't have to settle for what is being presented. We can make moves by moving our eyeballs and turning the clicker away from these institutions that are really about, the bottom line and not necessarily about giving us the facts and giving us information so that we can make decisions to support or not support, to protest, to challenge, and to engage in our own governance, I would say.
Well, we're talking about shifting those eyeballs, as Reverend Carr says in our commercials. People need to bring their eyeballs home, and it's going to be sad to see so many of these other networks and individuals just acquiesce in advance. But you all know here on the Black Star Network, we're going to keep it real, and so we hope that those eyeballs continue to grow with us as well. As Roland Martin said last week, he started with like 1,500 subscribers or something, and reached 1.5 million last week, and we're approaching 2 million. So that's our goal right now. So we hope that many people will follow Joy's advice and bring those eyeballs right over here to the Black Star Network as well. And we're going to be keeping an eye on what's happening at SNBC as well.
It's great and important advice for any. Well, I would also advise people to look at international news, to look at The Guardian, to go to allafrica.com. I mean, one of the biggest challenges I find is that we have this tunnel vision about the United States, like we're the only place in the world. And we start looking at Africa news. I mean, South American news. I think it's really important there. I find, I mean, I am a CNN junkie, I'll admit it. But lately, I start to turn that mess off after 30 minutes in the morning. I do my prayer call, then I pray for the fools. And what has happened in my observation with CNN is that too many of the anchors have too many opinions. In other words, this woman was on last week, and somebody brought up the issue, the stupid Republican commercials about trans people. And she said, well, I have 2 little girls, and I'm just worried that some boy on a football field. And I'm like, give me a bloody break. That did not belong in the conversation. So we have to not only be discerning, but get out of the United States. Listen, watch BBC, something else, because when other people look at us, they see how flawed we are. We have had this myth of American exceptionalism, and it was a myth, but it held for any number of reasons. But this Trump nonsense makes it clear that there is nothing exceptional about this country. That when they say make America great again, when was it great? When was it great for Black people? When was it great for poor people? People have to be discerning about, I used to say years ago, there's a reason I don't like white people's sitcoms. Because when I open my door and let those fools in my house, if you're looking at some of this, no, they couldn't come in my house. So why would I watch them on television? And that's beginning to be the way I feel about some of this news. I mean, I watch Simone. I love her, love her, love her. I'll watch Abby sometimes. But basically, this is corporate media on steroids.
Absolutely. And I think that at the end of the day, it just really comes down to what both you all are saying. We have to figure out a way to get people to enhance critical thinking. And part of critical thinking is diversifying sources. And this is a great opportunity, as some of us are getting so disappointed with these networks and hosts that we respect on many levels, to start to doing that right now. This is a great time to do that. So both of y'all gave us powerful advice. The Guardian said that, this is their plan to stand up to Trump over these next 4 years. Are some of these journalist outlets going to do that here? We'll wait to see, because we know what we're going to do right here. We'll be right back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Leilani Collins has been missing from her Altadena, California home since August 24th of this year. The 15-year-old is 5 feet tall, weighs 109 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Leilani Collins should call the Los Angeles, California Sheriff's Department at 626-798-1131. The prosecution in the trial of a former Marine accused of the chokehold death of Jordan Neely on a New York subway rested its case today. Daniel Penny's attorneys moved for a mistrial again after the medical examiner mentioned the word homicide during Friday's testimony when discussing Neely's cause and manner of death. Penny is not on trial for murder. He's charged with criminally negligent homicide. His attorney argued that the witness's use of the word murder could be prejudicial. The judge ordered the word to be stricken from the record and continued the trial. The defense maintains Neely died from complications of sickle cell trait and not strangulation. However, the medical examiner said she believed Neely would have died from asphyxiation, whether or not he had sickle cell trait. Testimony is expected to conclude before Thanksgiving. Penny is facing up to 15 years in prison. Eljoy, you are in New York. What is the vibe there? What are people seeing? What are they saying about this tragedy?
Well, first, people were disappointed in the person not being charged with murder going forward straight out. And that's probably the reason why you would see a witness mention that on the stand. So there was some disillusionment about that because, as the medical examiner mentioned, the intervention of this person into the incident is what caused the death. And, certainly the community writ large hopes that that would be the verdict in this case. And it just, I think it's also important to sort of put into context for people what the atmosphere is, and particularly during that time, were that there was this narrative that people who are experiencing, mental health issues, who are in the subway system, that we should be fearful of them, that, there were news stories on local news and everything about, am I safe, right? Like there was all of this that contributed to the atmosphere in terms of people wanting to intervene and be present during this time. And it's something that still is occasionally brought up about how safe the subway is. But I don't know how many New Yorkers people are like, I'm a New Yorker. I take the train and I go to, I go to work and I go to school and, that's what happens. But there certainly was that atmosphere that oftentimes when it rears its head, it's usually usually coming from people that don't live in the city proper, right? They're, commuting outside, so from Long Island or Connecticut or Jersey or what have you. And then, it's news media like the Post and the local news sort of drive up the conversation of being safe and not thinking about the issue. And I think this goes to something that you mentioned when we were talking about a previous case just in this show about people interacting with law enforcement, that it's usually people who are homeless and who are suffering from a mental illness who are the victims of crimes rather than them actually committing crimes. And this is an instance where you can see very well playing out where someone, is taking up space and people believe that they're taking up too much space. And they unfortunately, other people intervene and the person has lost their life. So I think about those things when those conversations come up about public safety and about, as Dr. Malveaux said, white people being fearful and what kind of atmosphere that creates for other vulnerable populations in our communities. And no matter what the facts may say, like I mentioned, that it is usually people who are suffering mental illness or who are homeless that are victims of crime, what the narrative ends up being is that they are thrusting crime upon us and they are making us unsafe. And then you result in the situations like this.
And Dr. Malveaux, as we wrap up, one of the concerns I have is that this is something. I mean, we all remember the national outrage and people were jumping to defend Penny and so on and so forth. I feel like under Trump, there are going to be more people, citizens on the streets, who are going to be emboldened to take actions like this because they feel like they got a president who's going to have their back and a whole news network of Fox and all of these other organizations that are going to support them. And so many of us may have to watch out for more of these types of actions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look at it, first of all, this person who's about to be the president has already encouraged law enforcement to go butt wild against us. Secondly, he says on day one, this is what he's going to do. Thirdly, because of the climate that he's created, racist white people have gotten bold. And they will say anything, do anything, get in people's faces, and they don't care because they know, again, not to keep leaning on lynching. I'm in the middle of some book stuff. But lynching culture says you can do whatever you want to Black people, and there will be no consequences. And so people put their hands on people. People do all kinds of crazy things. We have to be ready and willing to document this stuff. Rose is always talking about, I'm gonna have to get a lesson or two, using your camera, document this stuff. We have to be able and willing to step up. One of the things that has revealed to me through the election is the number of timid Black people there are out there. People who don't want to rock the boat, don't want to say anything. And, that's a safe way to go. But there is no safety in racist, predatory, capitalist, white America. There is no safety for our children. Mentally ill riding on the subway, walking down the street. There is no safety. So quiet is not going to protect you. Loud is going to protect you. Good trouble is going to protect you. So this is yet another case, Omakongo, as you know, yet another case where you look at it and you say, WTF, are we still doing this? But the answer is yes, we are still doing this. And as you say, I think the most important thing is that we are aware and we're vigilant and we're ready to fight back. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, said Claude McKay. Haunted and pinned to this inglorious spot. And the last two lines of that poem are, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. That's what we got to do.
That's right. And we're going to continue to fight back. We're going to continue to uplift names like Jordan Neely, continue to send out this information, because really at the end of the day, we can't go down quietly. We have to rise up. And one of the ways, like you said, is rising up is by using our voices, using our power, and using our influence. Because we've been here too long and we ain't going back, as an incredible woman said just a few weeks ago. L. Joy Williams, I want to thank you. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, I want to thank you as well for joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. And I want to thank everybody tonight for watching. Please follow the Black Star Network on all of your platforms. Check out Roland Martin Unfiltered and all of the other great things we have going on this network. And please support financially in any way that you can as well through all of the different platforms that you know are available to you. Thank you so much, and thank you for letting me host tonight, and I will see you next time. Holla.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?